Flying with a 14-month-old is never easy. It's a chaotic ballet of packing enough snacks, toys, and diapers to survive the journey, not to mention the constant attention required to soothe a restless child. On this particular flight from Atlanta to San Francisco, I found myself trapped in the overwhelming, suffocating routine of trying to calm my fussy baby. As I settled into my seat, the hum of the airplane engines began to take over, but it did little to drown out the shrill sound of my daughter's cries. There was no clear reason for her distress. She had been fed, changed, and rocked. Yet her little face was scrunched in discomfort, her small fists clenched in frustration. Each time I tried to console her, her wails only grew louder, echoing through the cabin. Around me, passengers exchanged uncomfortable glances. I could almost feel their impatience creeping up from the corners of my mind, like a thick fog. With each passing minute, the anxiety in my chest tightened. The guilt of being that parent in a crowded airplane weighed heavily on me, especially with my daughter's cries seeming to pierce the already tense air. I was on the verge of tears myself. A wave of exhaustion and frustration hit me as I desperately tried to comfort her, my efforts futile. I felt helpless knowing that no matter what I did, the situation wasn't improving. The seatbelt sign was on, and the flight attendants were busy with their own tasks, so there wasn't much I could do beyond trying to pacify her in my seat. It was then that I noticed him, an older man sitting across the aisle, his face kind and approachable, yet still, I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. His eyes met mine, and I quickly looked away embarrassed. But to my surprise, he spoke up. "Excuse me," he said, his voice soft and sincere. "I don't mean to intrude, but would you like me to hold your baby for a while? I have a child around the same age, so I understand how difficult it can be. Let me take her out for a bit. I'm sure I can calm her down." The words hung in there for a moment, and I stood frozen, my mind racing. The thought of handing my baby over to a complete stranger on a plane was unnerving, to say the least. Yet in my current state of exhaustion, the offer felt like a lifeline. My nerves were frayed, and the overwhelming need for a moment of peace made me seriously consider his suggestion. I hesitated, the maternal instinct inside me screaming to keep my daughter close. But she was so upset, and I was so tired. I just wanted her to stop crying, to feel some semblance of control again. After a long pause, I took a deep breath, nodded, and handed her to him. As soon as he cradled her in his arms, something remarkable happened. My daughter, who had been inconsolable just moments before, stopped crying almost immediately. Her small body relaxed, and she let out a contented sigh, her little hands curling around his finger. I couldn't believe it. For the first time in what felt like hours, the plane was quieter, my baby calm, and my anxiety starting to recede. I almost didn't believe it was real. How could someone, a stranger, so easily calm my upset child? The man's soft whispers to my daughter and gentle rocking calmed the storm inside me. For the first time since the flight began, I allowed myself a moment of respite. I turned to grab my laptop from in front of me, thinking that maybe I could distract myself with work for a while. But just as I reached for my bag, I looked back at the man. My heart stopped in that fleeting moment. The image of the kind man smiling at my daughter took on a different tone. He was now leaning toward her, his lips moving quietly as he whispered something in her ear, his expression strangely intense, even ominous. I couldn't hear the words, but his manner was unsettling, a stark contrast to the calm demeanor he had shown moments before. My breath caught in my throat. A cold shiver of panic ran down my spine. The anxiety that had briefly lifted now surged back to its peak, only stronger and more paralyzing. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Was I overreacting? Was I just overly cautious in this new vulnerable chapter of my life as a mother? I didn't know, but what I did know was that the moment no longer felt safe. My instinct kicked in, and I immediately stood up. My voice a little too sharp as I said, "Excuse me, I think I need to take her back now." The man's face shifted back into his kind, harmless smile, and without hesitation, he handed my daughter back to me. I could feel her heartbeat pounding against mine as I cradled her, pressing her to my chest as if to shield her from the world. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to breathe deeply. "Thank you," I whispered, though I was no longer sure what I was thanking him for. I sat back down in my seat, my body trembling, but I refused to look back at the man. Instead, I focused all my attention on my daughter, making sure she was okay, reassuring myself that I was still in control. The remainder of the flight passed in a blur. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that lingered, gnawing at me, but I was determined not to let it overshadow the relief of having my daughter back in my arms. Once we landed in San Francisco, I immediately made my way to the airport security desk, my heart still racing. I didn't know if I had overreacted or if my instincts had been right to question the situation, but I felt an overwhelming need to report the incident. The security personnel were calm and professional, taking down the details and reviewing the flight security footage. They spoke with the man and investigated further, determined to ensure my safety and peace of mind. A few hours later, I received a call from security. The man had been thoroughly investigated. It turned out that he was not only a father but also a child psychologist who often traveled for work, frequently assisting parents with young children during flights. His intentions were completely innocent, his actions motivated by a genuine desire to help. He had never once meant to cause any harm. Relief washed over me, mixed with a sense of embarrassment for having doubted him. I realized that my protective instincts as a mother had pushed me to react quickly and strongly in a situation that could have been nothing more than a kind gesture. But the experience taught me something crucial, that my first duty was always to protect my child, and that sometimes, our instincts, however unnerving they may seem in the moment, are meant to be trusted. In the end, the journey from Atlanta to San Francisco had been a lesson in vulnerability, trust, and the delicate balance of parenting. I learned that, as much as I wanted to protect my child from the world, there were moments when I had to let go, even if just for a second, and trust that the world would be kind.